question this morning. How many of you hold a passport, a valid passport? Oh boy, there's a lot of you. Great. I'm just wondering, a valid passport allows U.S. citizens to go into most, but not all, foreign territories. For some countries, a visa as well as a passport is required. And in our text that Rhonda shared with us today, Paul's primary reference was a 5-foot-high wall between the court of the Gentiles and the court of the women in the temple in Jerusalem. And on that wall appeared the often repeated inscription to the Gentiles, warning them to go no deeper into the temple precincts. No deeper. And if they did, they would have only themselves to thank for their death, which would inevitably come. The wall represents the prejudice that was a burning issue between the Jews and the Gentiles. There was no love lost between these two groups of people. Paul, in writing to the church in Ephesus, recognized, if you would, a passport crisis was occurring within the church. Some congregations then, and perhaps now, required certain ethnic, political, and theological visas before entry of full acceptance was granted. Racial and cultural divisions between the Jews who had come to faith in Christ and the many Gentiles that were now flocking to the church had reached a breaking point. Jewish Christians did not recognize the Gentile passport as offering proof of full citizenship in the kingdom of God. The wall of the Gentile court physically excluded the Gentiles. Physically, literally physically excluded. And the visa that the Jewish Christians were demanding of the Gentile believers was the physical passport stamp of circumcision. Since the time of Abraham, circumcision meant that one was truly an Israelite. And without that mark, Gentiles could only be second-class citizens. But this is where Paul intervenes in the situation, like a fair-minded customs official. As a Jew, and as an apostle to the Gentiles, Paul understood the dilemma, but he also knew the solution to the problem. He proposed that the old passports held separately by the Jews and the Gentiles were now invalid, as passports were no longer any good. In Christ, there is neither Jew nor Greek, bond or free, Paul wrote to the Galatians. Your Jewish passports and your Gentile passports are invalid. As citizens of a new sovereign realm, you've been freely given a new passport with a visa that will get you into a community of faith anywhere in the world. Visit the church in Rome, they'll let you in. Visit the church in Corinth, they'll let you in. Visit the church in Thessalonica, they'll let you in. Visit the church in Glendale, they'll let you in. Your old passport, your connections to a previous life have been replaced by a new common citizenship where the only qualification is faith in Christ. And the only visa needed is the mark of Christ's blood shed on the cross. At one time, Gentiles, as far as the Jews were concerned, were considered to be passportless, aliens and strangers, who were at least temporarily without a country, without hope, and as Rhonda read in verse 12, and without God in the world. But now, Paul said, those who were once far off have received a new identity along with God's covenant people. A new identity stamped with the blood of Christ. So what are the benefits of a new and a valid passport? Paul offers a short list of some of the rights and the responsibilities of faithful passport holders in the sovereign realm of God. And I'd like to touch on just a couple of those benefits this morning. First, the passport transcends artificial boundaries and borders. In verse 14, Paul reminded the Ephesians that Christ in his flesh has made both Jews and Gentiles into one group and has broken down the dividing wall, that is the hostility between them. You know, Paul may have been writing about his own house arrest that allowed him time to write to the church in Ephesus. Because you see, Paul had been accused of bringing a Gentile into the temple in Jerusalem. Taking a Gentile beyond the dividing wall was a heinous act, punishable by death. The only reason that Paul was executed on the spot was because he was a Roman citizen. The reader of Paul's letter would have known why he was in prison, and for them the barrier between the Jew and the Gentile was best symbolized by the dividing wall of the temple. Paul announces, and this must have come as a powerful shock, that this dividing wall had been shattered in Christ, who takes the place of the temple and enables all people to come together in him. The sad thing is that there are still plenty of dividing walls, both inside and outside the church, just as there were in Ephesus. Divisions of race, politics, practices, and doctrines often cause Christians to look at each other as second-class citizens of the sovereign realm of God. Shame on us. Shame on us. Paul says that faith in Christ transcends these artificial boundaries. Like him, we must be bold enough to cross these boundaries, even if it costs us something. If we are in Christ, if you and I are in Christ, the only passport, and the most powerful one, is a passport of that one country of which we are all citizens. Secondly, the passport of the sovereign realm of God brings with it a new set of rules. created in himself one new humanity in place of two, thus making peace. The law to which Paul refers was the law of Moses and its practices that separated Jews and Gentiles. Paul saw this law as already fulfilled in Christ. The death and the resurrection of Jesus made peace between God and us, between God and humanity, and between Jews and Gentiles. Citizenship in the kingdom of God is thus marked by faith in and obedience to Christ, and not by what we eat, or what we wear, or how we worship. Our citizenship in the sovereign realm of God is a citizenship in a country that has no end, and all are invited to travel to it for an unlimited time period. And what's more, you and I, we're invited to become citizens. You know, it's freely offered, and there's nothing that you need to do to qualify except to gratefully receive. It's an offer that will never be revoked. The passport will not be confiscated or become invalid. In a world where divisions seem to grow deeper every day, would you agree that it seems like every day we become more divisive? It's time for the church to renew the passport we've been given in Jesus Christ. It's time to be bold enough to break down the walls of racial, ethnic, social, and political divisions in the church, so that we can demonstrate to the world what true citizens of the divine commonwealth look like. We must be willing to go and share this life together with other citizens whom the government and pundits might see as aliens and strangers, but who the people of God see as brothers and sisters and fellow citizens of another world, a different age. The miracle of the New Testament was the inclusion of the Gentiles into Christianity. Who should we be included today? Who should we? That's my struggle. I bet it's a struggle for many of you as well. So continue to ask yourself, as I'm going to continue to ask myself, who should we be included? We're going to close